Good morning, everyone. We are up to Perek Ches Mishna Vav. Until now, we're talking about the exposed water and the concern of a poisonous snake injecting venom into it. Now we have a different case, a different scenario with the same concern. Nikure te'enim va'anovim. If, let's say, you find te'enim or figs, and nikure means the punctured ones. You have a punctured fig, va'anovim, or punctured grapes. The kishuin, the Art Scroll translates kishuin as shaped melons. Vadaluin, they translate as bottle gourds. Vavatichem, watermelons. Vamalafafainos, muskmelons. In all these cases, in all these situations, by all these different produce, you find they're punctured. Afiloem kikar, even if they are the weight of a kikar, which is translated as a talent, that means it's something very large. Echa gadol echa katan, whether large or small, which should mean whether the whole is large or small. Echa talosh v'echa mechuber, whether it became punctured when it was detached or while it was attached. Kol sheyesh b'leicha aser, as long as there is some moisture in it, it is forbidden. So here, again, you've got this fig. It's been punctured. It's got a hole in it. So we don't know where the hole comes from. We have to be concerned that it came from, again, poisonous creature that bit into it and injected venom. So it's dangerous to eat. And therefore, we say you're not allowed to eat it. Now, the Mishna said, even if it's as large as a kikar, that means even something large, we don't say, well, chop off the part where the hole is and the rest is okay. The answer is, no matter, it could be very large, but we're still concerned that it's going to spread throughout. And whether the hole is large or whether the hole is small, again, either way, we have to be concerned that it came from a poisonous creature. And whether it's detached, attached, whether it became punctured while it was attached or detached, makes no difference. However, kol sheyesh b'leicha, it has to have some kind of moisture. If we're talking about a dried out fruit, then it's not going to spread throughout. You cut off the part where the hole is, and the rest of it is okay. But once there is some kind of moisture that's there, okay, let me just read how the Yad Avram says it. The entire fruit is forbidden only where the fruit contains some moisture. In such a case, any poison can spread throughout the fruit, and this is why the entire punctured fruit is forbidden. But if the fruit was completely dried out when it was punctured, the poison would not diffuse throughout the fruit. Accordingly, in such a case, the area of the puncture is sliced off, and the rest of the fruit may be eaten. So that's the condition to say the whole thing is forbidden. To say the whole thing is forbidden when there's a puncture in one place, no matter how big it may be, there has to be some moisture to this fruit. But if it's completely dried out, then it's the area itself where we're concerned about. Slice it off. The rest of it is good. Now, the Yad Avram adds something else very interesting. Additionally, if the puncture did not penetrate the skin of the fruit and did not reach the moist part of the fruit, it would be permitted. For example, if the puncture did not fully penetrate the rind of a watermelon, the watermelon would be permitted. That's interesting. Watermelon rind definitely has some moisture to it, but it's not going, but according to this, the rind is not necessarily going to, the rind is not going to, it's not going to spread from the rind to the moist part of the fruit. And therefore, we say that the rind may be a problem, but not the fruit. That would be another way of, that's another part of this idea when the Mishnah says that if it has moisture, then the whole thing would be forbidden. The Mishnah concludes, something that was bit by a snake is forbidden because it is danger to life. Here again, a kosher animal that was bitten by a snake is forbidden for consumption, even if it was properly slaughtered. Okay? The reason the animal may not be eaten is that the poison remains in its flesh and therefore is dangerous for human consumption. So that's the problem. If it was bit by the poisonous snake, we're afraid there's venom in this flesh, and it went throughout the whole animal. It is not only the limb that was bitten that is forbidden, rather the entire animal is prohibited. This is because the poison spread or may have spread throughout the animal. So if the poisonous snake bit the animal, even if you shechted it, you would not be able to eat any part of the animal because of the venom that we're concerned spreads throughout the entire animal, and that would be dangerous and therefore forbidden to eat. We're going to do one more Mishnah, which is a very short one. Hamishameres shal yayin asur mishum gilui. A strainer of wine is forbidden because of exposure. Reb Nechemia mat, Reb Nechemia permits. Now we're going back to the liquid that was exposed. And the case here is the following. Basically, you had a vessel, was left exposed. It's forbidden because we're concerned there is venom in there. Now you're taking that vessel and pouring it into another vessel that has a strainer on top of it. Okay, that's the case. The case is right. The bottom utensil is covered by a strainer. So you're basically straining the wine, the wine that you had before, we'll call it the wine on top, into the wine below, into the vessel below that has the strainer. Now, the wine permeates the strainer and fills a second container. Fills a second container by making it free of dregs. By straining it through the bottom one, you're straining out the dregs, the big pieces that are in there. The question is, though, once you're straining it, does it strain the poison? The Tanakama says no. It's still going to be forbidden because it's gilu. It's still going to be forbidden. It's still considered exposed. It's the same liquid as before. The liquid with the poison with it now is the liquid in the second vessel, although it went through a strainer. And at the end of the day, it's now going to be forbidden. That wine that was strained into the other vessel is going to be forbidden. Right. Now, Reb Nechemia permits. Reb Nechemia says no, it's permissible. Now, he holds that the strainer is going to keep back the poison. So the Yad Avram brings down the commentary to Tiferes Yisrael that has a question about, what exactly is this argument? We're arguing over facts. Does it go through? Does it not go through? How do we understand this? How do we explain this? So an explanation brought down here very interestingly is the following. And that is that number one, the Gemara says that even according to Reb Nechemia, if the upper container was stirred, then the poison breaks up and will then be able to penetrate the strainer. In other words, Reb Nechemia argues that since the poison comes in the form of a viscous mass, it does not pass through the strainer. If this mass is broken up into small pieces, it will not be kept out by the strainer. So the poison is viscous. It has substance to it. And essentially, the strainer should be able to hold it back. But if you stir it up, if you stir up the liquid before, that breaks up the poison and it can go through the strainer. That's Reb Nechemia. Okay? So therefore, now the Yad Avram suggests accordingly, the dispute between the Tanakama and Reb Nechemia could be whether one must take into account the possibility that the movement of the wine in the upper container breaks up the poison and makes it able to permeate the strainer. Presumably, this is sometimes the case, and the Tanakama therefore prohibits all cases lest the poison in the upper container was broken up. We know that if you mix it, it's going to break it up. But there's also an argument to say that when you move it around, it's also going to break up. That can happen sometimes. Therefore, the Tanakama says if that could happen, we have to always be concerned that could be the case. While the top one is being moved, because you're picking it up and moving it to strain it, so the liquid inside is moving, it could happen that that's going to break up the poison and it's going to go through the strainer. Being that that is a possibility of happening, the Tanakama says we have to always be concerned with that, and therefore pouring it through the strainer is not going to permit it. Okay. Reb Nechemia, however, holds that unless the upper container is consciously stirred, the possibility that the poison was broken up need not be considered. This kind of consideration, according to Reb Nechemia, unless you consciously stir it, just from the movement, you would not presume that it broke up. You would not, and you could assume it doesn't break up enough to say that if you put it through the strainer, the wine in the bottom is going to be permitted. So that is a way of explaining this argument. Okay. So that was Mishna Zayin that we just read. So we did two Mishnayos because of the fact that the second one was quite small. Okay, today's mitzvah prohibition against erecting what's called a matzeva in any place. Shneimar, as it says, you shall not set up for yourself a pillar. Umatzevahi, what is a pillar? Binyan avonim. It's a structure of stones. Shalkom miskabsen etzla. The people gather around it. It's some kind of like a meeting place. And that's forbidden to do. Vafilu lavadas Hashem, even if you're doing it to serve Hashem, Asher is forbidden. Shekeno yaderach akum, because this was the way of the idol worshippers. It doesn't say you're offering a sacrifice on this. It just says you're gathering around it. But that was the way of the idol worshippers, and therefore the Torah forbids it. Somebody who transgresses and erects this matzeva, this pillar, anywhere, even to serve a god, receives lashes. This applies in all places at all times, both by men and by women. Now, again, we know that there's people put up a monument by a grave. That's not what we're talking about here. This seems to be some kind of a structure of stones that people gathered around, and that is what we're talking about is forbidden to make. Have a wonderful day.